Welcome to the Success Pick and Mix podcast. I'm your host, Nicky Raby, a professional pick and mixer. I'm a personal brand coach, a speaker, an actor, a creator, and a podcaster. I'm on a mission to help you find and create your version of success. Your pick and mix of life and business on your terms. A blend that complements your personality, your goals, and your circumstances. Since 2018, I've been sharing interviews and mini episodes to help you unlock your next step, to make it real and make it happen. Round here, we dream big. We go for the ideal version. We talk about money and make moves our future selves would be proud of. This podcast is free and available for you whenever you need it. So do rate, review, and subscribe for new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices and availability, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests. Now, on to today's episode. Hello, Lucy. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So we are both hanging with our small bears today, but aside from motherhood, like, tell everybody what you do. What's your job? What's your thing? What's your message? What you're all about? Hype yourself. Oh my God, I've got that in there already. It will all make sense in a minute.
So yeah, the main thing I am pushing at the moment is I have a book coming out very soon called Hype Yourself. And basically, I'm about helping small businesses to learn how to do publicity for themselves. It started off as a consultancy, so I did take on clients. I had a big team and a big agency, and now I've kind of taken more of a leaner business approach, and it's just myself. I bring in freelancers if I'm doing kind of client projects, but really kind of for this point in my life with the small little person, it's more about online courses, coaching, giving out loads of free tips and advice on my Instagram and newsletter. And my partner, Adrian, has joined me, and he does the same thing, but from design and branding. So we're trying to be that one-stop, affordable...
Dream team.
Yeah, to sort of help small businesses brand build, essentially, and promote themselves.
Amazing. Well, I can't remember when we first got to know each other, but like maybe at the beginning of this year, who knows? But Instagram has been a real big thing for you, hasn't it? In terms of like you seem to know lots of different people. You're there, and your presence is. I mean, I know that the dream team is, has the branding element of it as well, but you have a real. You've made a decision to stick your flag in the sand and not be like everybody else. So I guess, how did that process start for you?
I think it started, to be honest, I'd had an Instagram account that wasn't really doing anything, and I tried out different types of content, and the engagement sometimes did well, sometimes didn't, and I realised that it just didn't look as good as it could have done. That I can objectively look at somebody else's feed and say, yeah, that looks great. I was really struggling to do it myself. Mm-hmm. So I actually went about, firstly, getting my own personal branding shots done, and I got a load of headshots done. And then once I'd invested in that, I was like, okay, you've got to, you spent a fair whack on that. You've now got to use those.
Now I've got to put them actually on the internet and not just leave them on my desktop.
Exactly. So I deleted everything that I'd ever put out on Instagram.
Did you? Oh, I love bold moves like that.
I unfollowed everybody. Like, I paid for one of those apps and I deleted everyone.
And started from scratch?
I started from scratch. I had 1,268 followers on December the 31st this year.
Wow. And so why did you feel like you had to just go back to basics? Because I know that I've had that moment in terms of, right, that's it, I'm not doing that anymore. But there is always that little voice in the back of my head that goes, no, hang on a minute, like, be grateful for what you've done, or stick with what you know. How did you know you were getting that wiggle niggle?
To be honest, I was always one of those people at school that loved the start of a school term and getting a new exercise.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Doing your best neat writing.
breaking spine. I'm a bit of a stationery geek, like that kind of smell of like beautiful paper and stuff. And for me, it was that same feeling of, I didn't feel emotionally attached to everything I put out. It didn't feel right. It didn't feel on brand. And actually, weirdly, a lot of the content that I put out is the same. It just looks different.
Yes. So you're not reinventing the wheel. This is the thing. People think, right, I've got to start with everything. If one piece doesn't work, I've got to scrap everything. And it's really not the case.
Yeah, and also I had an apprentice before my first child was born, and she was a digital marketing apprentice, and she really helped me analyze what worked well and what didn't. And without fail, it didn't matter how sort of different the content was across the board on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. If it was me doing it, the engagement was always higher, and especially if it was a photo of me talking about something or being at something. So I guess I kind of learned that actually nobody cares about me having a team lunch or where I'm going for dinner, or people really hate me sharing press coverage. But if I say, this is how I got the press coverage, I'm really into it. And so it was really tweaking it into actually what my audience wants to know about me rather than what I wanted to tell them. So when I'm sharing my personal stuff on Instagram, it tends to be on stories rather than on the grid. So it's two sort of types of content. And the same with LinkedIn. I will show a bit of personal, but generally across the board, Insta stories is really where I show anything that's happening in my personal life, with obviously there's still a filter on that. But the grid is very much more focused on PR and branding tips and what I can give to people who are following so that it's useful for them. So it is very curated now in a way that it wasn't before.
Because you've got your man going, no.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he will say to me, like, that photo doesn't fit, take it down, sort of thing.
God.
But I will basically plan it visually, and then I almost reverse fit the content to fit the visuals. So sometimes I'll find images, like there's one of a tomato I've used today that I know will fit. So then I think about what content I could use that will fit a face on the tomato.
Nice. Do you know what I love about this? And it's something that I am leaning into much more. And like, it's really fascinating talking to another mum who has, very early into second child, I mean, technically none of us should be doing this. We should be just being fanned while we lay in bed and, watch telly. But for me, having a new baby, almost, there's something that my body goes through in the way that I can't consume or hold on to any stuff that doesn't serve me. So it almost kind of creates space for stuff or thinking, and it makes me a bit like I shouted at a van driver today who shouted something back at me, and I just became my inner 17-year-old again of like, yeah, right, whatever, mate, kind of, and it felt good. But my feeling is, having a new baby or going to a next chapter of your business can shake up everything you've ever known. And what I love about what you're doing is you're almost ignoring the templates of what everybody else says. So the fact that you're saying, come over for free, hang out, float around, and we don't have to do this secret, DM me for the secret, sales funnel, or you're not doing any of that sort of stuff. And I did a story about this earlier, like, I'm going to give you all the free content and you can find it on my site. If you want to sign up for the whole thing, do that. And I think there's something really refreshing and lovely about that. And that's why people are hanging out on your grid.
Hopefully. I mean, I'm a terrible salesperson if it's premeditated. So funny enough, I've started dipping my toe into this online course thing. And I've tried out 3 different methods so far. Completely bizarre results. The first one, I just did an Instagram story and said, would anybody be interested? And then I only gave it to the people who were interested, but they all bought it, apart from like 2, and then it wasn't right for them. Then with Adrienne's one, which was on Instagram design, I really teased it out. I said it was coming. I said it was only £50. I talked about my feed. And I did think that because I've got more of a profile than him, it wouldn't sell. But we sold a ridiculous number of places to that. Like we sold I think 45. which for his first ever course was amazing. But then I guess my Instagram feed is living evidence of his work.
Yeah.
So I guess I was kind of a living advert for him subliminally without me really thinking.
Totally.
And then my next one, I was really like, oh yeah, I can't be bothered to sell it. If you want it, do it. And I've had 5 people do it. And I'm beginning to get people going, oh my goodness, I've learnt so much. I've got 3 pages of notes. I'm going to start tomorrow. And I'm thinking, I should probably actually do a bit more promo. And I saw somebody talking yesterday about how it was Helen from Not About the Kids.
Oh, yes.
She was saying you should talk until it feels uncomfortable to talk about what you're selling. If you don't feel uncomfortable selling it, you're not selling it enough. And I thought, yeah, I definitely haven't got to that stage yet, so I probably need to be doing it a bit more.
No, but I loved, and I've been doing a similar thing with a new program that I've done, and do you know what, like, talking to people about what they need is really missing. And I got to the point where I would create stuff and it would be sparkly and finished and it would take me 6 months to make, and then people would sort of say, oh, it would have actually been cool if you'd done this, this and this, and I was like, oh, of course, and I missed that. Whereas I'm reversing it a little bit and having more conversations in the early stages, and now I seem to be hosting a live event, which I hadn't really anticipated, but it'll be fine. It'll be great, really. Yes. So tell me about your book process. How did that come about? And did you have a dream of writing a book, or did it just is it one of those things where you're suddenly like, this is what I seem to be doing?
Yeah, no, I definitely knew I wanted to do a book. When I started my own business 5 years ago, I kind of went back to the shop floor again, because in a PR agency, you get to a senior level and you almost stop doing the PR. You're just sort of managing a team. And I was like, oh God, I'm not even pitching to journalists anymore. Can I still do this? So I started reading loads of books about PR. And I did actually learn a lot reading those books, which made me realise that there were gaps in my knowledge, but there was something missing for me in all of those books, which is actually the strategy.
Yeah.
And all of those books were written by journalists turned PRs. So there was a bit of me that was kind of like, for goodness sake, like, surely there should be PRs talking about how to do PR, not journalists. PR to me also doesn't just mean getting in the newspaper. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a big myth that people think that to do publicity is just getting in the Times or the Telegraph. So I also wanted to address that and show all the other tactics. So I'm not knocking journalists doing PR books. I think they're very good at telling you how to pitch to a journalist, but there's so much more than that.
Yes.
And there's no point pitching to a journalist if you don't know why you're doing it. So the whole point of my book is like the very first, it's a very much a workbook toolkit type. Gets you to work, lots of exercises, lots of examples, lots of activities, lots of expert advice. And I'm just kind of walking you through the process that I would do. So I always start off with any client with doing a strategy. Then I make sure I've got everything they need in their media toolkit. So, you know, the dreaded press release, but press images, how they talk about themselves, the stories that they might want to talk about. Because for me, it's not just about, like, if I was talking to you as Nikki, I wouldn't be like, okay, let's not just talk about your podcast and your programs and your workshop. Let's talk about the fact that you and Matty are both freelance and how you juggle your lives. Let's talk about where you live in London. Let's talk about how being an actor influenced your current position. All the sort of stories that isn't necessarily promoting what you do, because it's that human interest side. And then obviously then there's all the different tactics. So for you, getting in the FT might be great for you to put on the banner of your website, but the reality is speaking at an event is probably going to get you a lot more engagement and a lot more people buying stuff from you, even if it's only a room of 30 people, than a national newspaper. So it's working more strategically. That's what I want people to focus on themselves.
Yes, and also getting people to be really specific about what getting in the press or getting out there actually means, because it is like that weird thing of like, I just want to be famous. It's like, but what for? And I always think like this with my acting career, like, if I'd wanted to just get out there, I would have gone on Big Brother, because there was a time, like when I left drama school and the reality TV stars were coming up, they were getting these amazing opportunities. But you have to know what your end goal is, and my end goal is not to be in a hot tub with some random.
And that's the thing. I think I got
not yet, anyway.
I got distracted from doing the book by kind of being outside influenced into building an agency and building a team, and if you turn it to 1 million, you'll be able to sell it. And I sort of started doing this, and I realised that actually I don't know any serial entrepreneur that's not a serial entrepreneur. Like, they're serial for a reason. So as soon as they sell one business, they're straight into the other. Cool. And I guess from my own upbringing, my dad ran his own business, and he worked all hours of the day. It was really difficult for him to take holidays. Money was like a real thing in my house growing up. So for me, I never wanted to work for money. Obviously, money is needed, but I didn't want to just take a job that paid well for the sake of it. I wanted to do something that I loved, and I do that now. And also, I wanted my job to fit around my children. I've got, I'm 36 now. I've got probably another 36 years worth of working. But my children are only going to be little wee people for a short period of time, and I really want to enjoy that. So doing the book was a distinct thing in my head of, I need to just pivot it right now, because rather than taking big 20 grand client retainers that are in Sweden and require me to fly and have a big team and be on board 24/7 and deal with a nightmare happening at 4 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, I just want to do one-to-one with the odd agency that might want to pay me a higher fee for that senior level strategic work, but basically do the odd project work with clients, so people like yourself who might need a bit of help doing their promotion over a few months, and then really push the kind of online courses, the teaching, the workshops, doing guest articles. So I was really changing how I wanted to make my income, and the book is basically the living, breathing calling card for that. Or I say calling card, business card, I guess. And
how did you know, apart from like the outside situation of actually having children, that it was the right thing? Because this is something that my clients struggle with a lot. Like, how do I know if it's going to work out, or when is the right time to pivot? Because sometimes things look right on paper, or they're presented with a situation, but still there's resistance.
I can't speak for anybody else because everybody's unique, but for me, nothing hones my ambition like pregnancy.
Yes.
Because the first time I was pregnant, I had a team. So it was all about, that pregnancy was all about arming that team to survive without me. And this pregnancy, I didn't have any employees on PAYE other than Adrian.
Yeah.
He's fine. He can run his own department without me. And I knew that I needed to make an income without doing client work, because I didn't want to be available. And with this type of work, yes, you do have to be on call to deal with somebody who can't log in, or somebody who's lost their password, or I do a lot of prep time before I do a coaching call with somebody to find out what they really need, and then there's a lot of follow-up afterwards. So although they're paying for an hour of my time, the reality is it's probably half a day.
Yes. And you're presenting so much free content, or putting yourself out there for free to generate those clients. So there is kind of general wheels in motion that you have to put out there in terms of your business.
So actually, I knew that maternity leave was a good time for me to make that pivot, because I knew I'd have time. I mean, my nervousness was pending what sort of baby I was going to have, and that's a whole other conversation. But, you hear people, there's something about Anna Jones, the Guardian journalist, who was trying to write a book, and she thought she'd finish it when her newborn arrived, and then she got one that cried quite a lot and would only sleep being held and rocked.
Yes.
So I knew in the back of my head I couldn't rely on having time. But generally speaking, babies do sleep a lot in the first few weeks of their life. So it does give you time to create content and load it up. And I find it funny. I think now I'm in month 4, and I went to my first actual work event last month, where I did a workshop and actually gave proper PR advice to real people as opposed to just my Instagram.
Yeah.
And everyone there was like, wow, you've been doing so much, you're everywhere. And I just thought it's so weird because I don't really see that that's what I'm doing. Like, I'm just sat at home in my garden office, breastfeeding and cuddling a baby, putting stuff out on Instagram and LinkedIn, and then I go and have a nap with him. Yeah. And then I maybe go for a walk. But I don't show the bits where, like, there's no video of me in bed or, like, in my pajamas.
Not anymore. Now you've taken it off the internet.
There's a whole load of, like, stuff that I'm doing that people don't see. So I do think as well that social media, I try and remind my followers every now and again, and I know you and I have had discussions like this, that it's not what it seems. Like, I'm not busy working all the time. No. But also, from a personal perspective, having the book and knowing that was launching in January, it meant I couldn't just rest on my laurels, because I suddenly had to do final proofread. I had to go to everybody who contributed, all 50 of them, and say, are you happy with what you submitted? Because that was actually 6 months ago.
Are you still alive?
Yeah. Then I had to ask people to be endorsers. And now I'm, like, really ramping up. Yeah, I'm talking to you today. I'm beginning to really ramp up writing guest articles and paid for like content to ramp up the book coming out in January. So I'm earning the least amount of money I've ever made, but I'm probably putting out more work than I've ever produced.
Yes. And you're so right about, you know, behind the scenes is not what it seems, but now having children, I don't faff. I could make writing a free blog post for my own website last all day pre-children, and I'd, you know, have lunch out, and then I'd procrastinate, I'd get in a YouTube scroll hole. And these days I really try and work on the basis of only doing stuff I really want to do, because if I focus on those things, it's brilliant and it feels aligned and it feels easy. And also there's something in me that I'm like, I'm so bloody grateful that I get to do my own thing. And that's not because it's just been a God-given thing. You know, there's been a lot of ugly cries along the way and a lot of mistakes and like, oh God, Mum, can you come and like mother me, even though I'm in my mid-30s. But it is I'm not working down a mine, or, you know, and I'm grateful for those. It's sometimes it is just faffing on Instagram and generating sales. I mean, you're bringing experience to the table for all those years, so people have not seen that. And somebody actually said to me the other day, I just kind of want to do what you're doing. And I said, yes, but you're seeing the end product of it. You're not seeing the process.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, I've been doing PR for 15 years. I've run my agency for 5. I've worked with hundreds, like not even a joke, like hundreds of entrepreneurs and business founders. So I know what I'm doing, but also I like to learn, I like to evolve as well. So I quite often go to talks that my competitors do or journalists do, and I'm always trying to brush up on my own skills. And, you know, I do an event with Found Flourish, which is with 3 other PRs, and actually it was my idea to pitch that to her to do, because, and they're all women that I've all been jealous of because I think they're way more successful than me, and how we're friends. And it's I think one of the biggest things that I've got out of the Instagram community is when things were difficult, like when my baby was born, or things like my mum was a bit poorly and my dad's been a bit poorly this year. But when my baby was born and it was all a bit tough, it was everybody on Instagram that suddenly came forward. I had letters and cards and gifts and all kinds of stuff being done for me, that because I didn't have that kind of team in an office to do a whip round, the freelance startup Instagram community all came together for me. Yes. And that was amazing. But also there are, you know, the flip side of that, I do get jealous of other people. I do worry that I'm not making as much money. I find it really difficult at the moment. There's lots of this, let's all talk about money, sharing how much money I earn. And I find that actually really uninspiring when I can't earn any money because I'm on maternity leave and I physically and mentally am not in a position to do that. So I just mute them.
Yes.
And I'm like, it's not for forever. It's not.
I wonder if we've muted the same people. That's for another story.
Probably, but I, but even and it's not even just people like we might know in our mutual circles. It was I did a free webinar with a big American coach on my first ever course. I made $30,000, and in my last course, I made $1 million. And I just thought, oh, please insert here, because I just thought this isn't actually inspiring for me. It doesn't feel realistic, and out of all of the people doing your courses, how many of them, I'd like to know what the actual average amount of money made is. I made £1,000 on my first ever course, and I thought that was amazing.
Totally.
And I'm really happy with that. But I don't shout about that on Instagram, because I also know people who are struggling to make £100 or even sell like a 15-minute freebie. So I think I'm totally digressing onto a totally different topic now, but I think it's it's taking everything on Instagram with a pinch of salt. And I do a lot on sorry, got a coughing little bear.
Fine, don't worry.
Done. I do a lot on LinkedIn as well, and if I start to feel like I'm going down an Instagram hole, I'll start focusing on LinkedIn.
Well, I think you're right with the money thing, is that it is a great conversation and it is all like, woo, women, yeah. But also, that saying one figure actually doesn't mean anything to me, because it's like, you made £1 million, but how much did you spend? Or what was that of profit? Or what are you going to do with that? Or have you got people who are in your office that you haven't paid because you're saying that you want to encourage new talent? What are your ethics behind that? And I think there's a real space for kindness, and I found that with my latest thing is that people have been filling out these pre-work and they've been spilling their hearts out, and it's been quite tough and heartwarming and illuminating to read. But so many people are craving, with PR, are craving those stories and that what happened and how I actually got here, not like I was homeless and then the next day I was a 7-figure business owner.
Yeah. And I also had it the other way. I had somebody ask me to promote her photography package, and she basically, it was like a day and a half's work per person, and she was going to give them 75 to 100 press shots they could use afterwards, but she was only charging £50. And I said to her, I can't endorse you, because paying for PR or coaching or design or photography, there's a value to that. There's, and I know there's that kind of meme that went round of, it took me 10 years to learn what I did in 30
Yes.
It's so true. And I just thought, I have so many friends that are photographers, they could not live off £50 for that amount of work.
Of course.
Wage. And you're not just doing yourself a disservice, you're doing the whole industry down.
Yeah. And there is that sense sometimes of when you, because I know you do this, you're learning and putting yourself out there, or going to events or upskilling, they for the most part cost money. And there are some rooms now that I don't necessarily want to be in for half a morning, because it's not a great use of my time, because those conversations are not necessarily it's if you're married or in a long-term relationship, people talking about who's fit and how many people they're going to snog that night, it's a different conversation. So I'm not going out tonight, and I'm probably not going to snog anyone, so yeah. Where do you see your business going next, and how do you decide that, and what influences that, and how do you keep reinventing yourself, I guess?
I just like the textbook example. I always shut down at Christmas for 2 to 3 weeks. Always. It's my non-negotiable. And I really spend time to look at what's worked, what hasn't worked, and I always put a plan together for a year. I kind of write down what I want the business goals to be, and how I'm going to get there. So I'll put a turnover that's way above something that's probably ever realistic, but you don't want to hinder yourself by putting something. If you say, I'm only going to make £5, you only make £5.
Yeah, of course.
So I always kind of aim really quite high. And then I have a few things on my wish list that, personally I want to do. Like maybe that's a holiday or a bathroom or a kitchen.
I was just going to say, on that money goal, how do you set that goal? Like, how do you find your figure?
I always try and go higher than the year before.
Yes.
I mean, having just had 2 children in the last sort of 2 years, that's obviously taken quite a steady nosedive.
Yes.
But I just look at my cost of living and how much I'd like to save and kind of aim sort of a fair whack above that. My absolute dream would be to have enough money to do up my house and buy a second home in France. We can go to France every summer when the kids are at school and do summer holidays in France so they can speak French, because my partner's French, if you don't already know. And maybe we work remotely, or we find a way to somehow do the French summers in Paris, where we just shut down.
Oh my God! Oh, that sounds. I'm available.
Dream. If that's ever achievable, who knows? But you've got to have the dreams, right?
Totally. And I had this conversation with my own coach where she basically called me out for what I was saying and how long it was going to take me to do something. She was like, you don't need that long. I was like, but this is what, and she was like, no, cut it in half, come on. And it's lovely when people call you out on stuff and you're like, oh gosh, okay. And it's nice when other people, because we're caring for people all the time, aren't we? Parents, kids, all that sort of stuff. So it's nice when other people see that. So you make your money goals, you add the personal, professional stuff in there.
For myself, this year, it was very much, I sort of almost revise it every quarter. So I started off in Q1 with a task of, I want to do 1 blog post a month for somebody else, 1 public speaking event, and 1 podcast. Did I already say podcast?
Blog post, yes.
So 1 podcast, 1 guest post, 1 speaking event. And it took me 2 months to start building it up. And then by 6 months, I was starting to be paid for events. And in Q3, I got my first paid for writing gig. And now in Q4, I guess, of the year, not the financial year, I'm doing some regular paid for speaking and writing, which is exactly where I wanted to be with a baby, because if he's up all night or up all day, I can still find pockets of time to do the writing, and when I'm at an event, I can make the event work.
Yeah, amazing. And this is the thing, everything can be doable, and especially I'm sure there's some first time mums that thinking, oh my goodness, how are they actually doing that? Well, I think first and second time parenting is quite different, because certainly the first time I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, and I couldn't make a sandwich, let alone go and speak to an audience. But you do find your different flows. And I was thinking the other day, when I had my first child, I was almost those feelings of jealous that people were out there doing all those things, and I just didn't feel like I could. And then having a bit of space away from it, I feel really grateful that there were people who were showing the way. So when it was my turn, I felt like I could do it as well. So sometimes those feelings are a good thing to spur you on when your time comes around again.
Yeah, I think it's also, sometimes I think maybe it'd be good to just have a fly on the wall for everyone to see, because, as you were talking then, I was sniffing, baby's head that I'm cuddling and rocking in front of you on the camera right now. And people, although they might hear the snuffle in the background, nobody can actually see that I'm sat here talking to you whilst he's fast asleep, giving him lots of lovely cuddles.
Yeah.
And what else am I going to be? I could be talking to you, or I could be watching TV. Arguably, this is work in inverted commas, but it doesn't feel like that. So, I guess for me, the business is really just making it fit around what I want. And right now, that's scaling back time I don't want to be on demand. I want to have pockets of time I'm available for work and be allowed to switch off the rest of the time and not be panicking about an email or a phone call or anything else that's coming through. And I really want to push the design and branding side of the business. I think Adrian's kind of coming behind me now, really, in terms of wants to almost do the same journey of kind of build it up a bit, do a lot of client work for a while. But I know he's also keen to raise his own profile and to give back. We both do a lot for free, but also, doing kind of paid for teaching work is something that we're both really passionate about. And because he's a French and dyslexic creative, he's got his own angle and own thing that he wants to talk about where, traditional education didn't really work for him. And yet he can sort of produce this amazing stuff. So he's got a real kind of give back piece that he wants to do. So I'm probably going to be pushing him to centre stage more, and he's definitely beginning to...
You're like Sharon Osbourne.
Yeah, basically. And it was funny, actually, because now I'm beginning to look at... I had a great conversation with Jess from Beyond Sonder, who was helping me in terms of like what I could potentially do with brands in the future for myself and my clients, because it's an area I didn't know anything about. So I started really looking at saves versus likes on Instagram. And I put a post up about Adrienne, had loads of saves. Like, he's no Brad Pitt. Why is everyone saving this?
Yeah. Who are these people going, yes, saving that one?
Background. But he's definitely going to be, he'll be on the grid more. He might do the odd guest takeover on my Instagram from time to time and just really make it more about PR, brand design, like one stop. Because I think everybody knows me as the PR expert now. It's just broadening that.
Yes, I love it that you're going to bring him out for special occasions. Like, here he is in a jazzy jacket, off we go. I've got two questions about that. One is like, how have you put those boundaries in place and those non-negotiables? Because I know so many of us really find that difficult to give ourselves permission, because I guess we've all been taught and programmed to keep working hard and keep striving, even if our bodies, minds, emotional states are saying no. And the second is, how have you found working with your partner?
So let's do the second one first. So I find working with Adrienne a dream when it's for other people.
Right.
If it's us working on Wern stuff, so our website or a product, it's very close to, I mean, we're not married, but if we were, it'd be close to divorce territory. So I've now brought in what I call a business therapist, but actually it's an online business manager called Claire from the assistants quarters.
Fantastic. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, yes, I loved it. Brilliant.
So when we need to have difficult chats about like doing the website or collaborative projects, she sits in like our relationship therapist and delegates between the two of us, and she runs the goals, she sets up the tasks on Asana for us, she chases Adrienne so I don't get involved in it. And I mean, we had a conversation with her that took 20 minutes that would have taken us 3 days and probably 5 screaming arguments.
So good.
Money well spent.
Yes. And knowing actually what you need as a couple is really important in business and in life, obviously, but it is those things of like, yeah, I've got lots of work going on the next couple of weeks. Like, I've had 4 clients today, which is quite a lot in one day for me, but I sort of had to have those conversations of like, so therefore we need to do a big shop on Saturday, so we've got food for the week, and we're not having that moment every night going, what are we going to eat for dinner tonight? You know, sometimes it's those basic things.
Claire literally sorted us out on that as well. She's like, you need to write down who's doing the nursery pick up and drop off, because we didn't have any routine post baby number 2. So she was literally like, right, she was managing us personally and professionally. But professionally, we don't do the same thing. Our skill sets are completely different. So there's no room for clashing except for when we're collaborating on me.
Yes. Emma Scott Child said that actually, because she works with her husband and they both can do both roles, which is the art director and the creative. I can't remember what the actual job title was, but when they do a project, one definitely assigns the skills of the art director and the other one is and they don't diversify from that. It's like, this is my dance space and this is yours and this is how we're going forward.
And we have like an external garden office that we actually got basically out of the redundancy money. Instead of buying a bathroom, we've got the garden office. But it means that, if I'm in the house with the 2 kids, he is out there working.
Yes.
So we're not on top of each other. And when we're in there, it's quite bizarre. When we're in there, we basically ignore each other. We both listen to music. I control the main room and he'll sit with his headphones on.
Brilliant. Romance is not dead.
But also, on the flip side of that, especially when I was pregnant, we would then once a week have a lunch date where we'd go to Chatsworth Road because we live in Clapton.
Nice.
And we'd go somewhere different for lunch every day, not every day, like once a week. And it meant that we actually were having this quality time together that we, without having to pay for a babysitter.
Lovely.
And lunch was so like cheaper than dinner, like win-win.
Yes, bed for 7 happy days. Yeah, totally.
So yeah, we're pretty good. He'll work, I like mornings, he likes evenings. I don't work weekends as a rule. I try really hard not to. So yeah, the kind of setting limits, I guess it's quite interesting, I think, from my upbringing of watching my parents work so hard, and it's something that brother does as well. I guess I come from a sort of family of workaholics. So I have to be really mindful to not slip into that.
Yes, me too.
I'm really careful to make sure I take breaks every 3 months. I try and go away where I can. Money's too tight to mention. So I'm actually going to go on a spa day rather than have a whole holiday abroad or in the UK. Just have a day to myself to recharge.
Yeah. Amazing.
So I find kind of like little ways, but also I guess, sort of going back to the work thing, of doing like what you love. For me, reading a newspaper at the weekend is technically work, but I enjoy that.
Yeah.
But it gives me so many ideas for content and so many themes that I could apply to other people. Same as like watching something on Netflix. Like my most popular post on Instagram was about fire festivals. And then one of my other most popular posts was about Kathy Burke. Like they were both in the top 9 for ages.
Interesting.
So things like what I watch on TV gives me content ideas. So for me, everything that I do kind of is work because it's all about like the media and culture environment that you're in.
Totally. I sometimes, if I'm ironing, I get really good ideas. I'm like, I'm just going to pause. I'm going to write that down. And most people are like, what? You iron? But I find it really meditative. And I find like I get into a flow and I'm like, oh, I could totally do a post about that. And it's like digesting time.
I find if I make the time to do the weekly food shop and write down who's doing exercise when, then everything goes a lot better. But recently, actually, I realised that I was taking on too much, and not even paid for stuff, just trying to work and collaborate with too many people and too many things. And I've just basically got a wish list of all the things that I'd like to do, and then just thought, you know what, I've worked so hard on this book to the point that I hate it currently.
Yeah.
And I'm really now beginning to ramp up the promotion for that because it comes out in January. And, it's important because I'm only going to get one chance to launch that book. And it was something I used to write 1 day a week from January. I did 1 day a week. And now I'm kind of doing 1 day a week on ProMace. With publishers, you don't really get that much marketing and PR support.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of work, and because of that I don't want it to flop at the final hurdle. So really my eggs are all in that basket, but hopefully the book will then help elevate me to be seen more as an expert, to get this kind of work that means I can have a balance that means I'm with my children more.
Yes, and it's doing really well. Like, it's climbing, it's moving and shaking, it's doing all the things, and yeah, it's exciting, it's so good, and you can tangibly see that, like, your hard work is paying off. So One final question. Where would you like to be in 5 years' time? What's the next chapter, I guess?
You know, on a personal note, obviously with baby B, he's had his like open heart issues that we haven't spoken about, but it's just there underpinning everything for me. So I think from a real personal level, in 5 years' time, I'd like to not be worrying about him, and because he will have open heart surgery again, and hopefully he will have that in the next 5 years, and hopefully they will sign him off for another 10 years. That would be, to get him kind of in a better position health-wise would really, really help me. And I guess from a professional perspective, it's just keep evolving and keep growing, and just
who knows what will have been invented in 5 years.
Goodness, who knows? I mean, in 5 years' time, I'm going to have, a child and a bit with legs in school. So it's going to be a completely different work setup. So I'm suddenly going to have 5 days a week, but short days.
Yes. And being that mum at the school gates going, go on, get in, I've got to get back, I've got to do all the things.
So I think, funnily enough, right now I really see myself doing the more like publicity side of things, but long term I think I'd quite like to do more direct stuff with entrepreneurs somehow, still on the promotional side, but something more of a service, something around that.
Nice. And you've got a podcast coming, Cooking.
Well, that's one of the projects that's been put on pause actually, because I can't really dedicate the time to it right now, but there might be something in 2020, but I like to kind of not talk about stuff until I know it's baked and ready to come out of the oven. So.
I agree. That is a good thing. Yeah, certainly with...
It's there, but nothing to consume right now.
Yes, but watch this space. Who knows? If people want to come and find you, where should they go?
So on all social handles, it's at WernChat, which is WERN, WernChat. And www.thewern.com.
Amazing. I think you are brilliant and wonderful, and you brighten my day. So thank you so much for all your chats and insight and all that good stuff. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode. If you haven't already, feel free to rate, review, and subscribe for all the brand new episodes. If you want to go deeper with my support, check out my freebies house and unlock the rooms you choose. nickyraby.com/freebies house. I also have workshops, programs, and one-on-one bespoke offerings. For prices, availability, or just to have a chat with me, go to nickyraby.com. Thank you, as always, for spending some time with me and my guests, and I'll see you next time.